Hi, and welcome to the Thrive Space live stream. So we've got another live stream for you today. It's Burnout is Boring, so let's talk thriving instead. Today, this live stream is slightly different. We've got an additional platform that we're using at the YouTube platform, our YouTube channel. And so with that, there's a fewer interaction exercises that we can do, or interaction elements that we can do. So bear with us. You're welcome to comment. Feel free to comment on how you're doing today. I'm actually having a great day. I know that not necessarily everyone's feeling that way at the moment, and that's why we're here. So if you're one that's sort of feeling exhausted and just sort of just overwhelmed with everything that you're doing, I've been there. I've burnt the candle at both ends of the stick. That was not that long ago. It was just last year. I felt exhausted just scrolling on my sofa, doing minimal work that I could do, not necessarily enjoying my job, feeling unsuccessful, feeling like, no, I didn't want to, go to work at all, but having to do that in order to pay the bills. So that's definitely, I've been there. If that's you today, you're in the right spot. We're going to talk how to get out of it and how I've sort of what I've done to get from that state to this state now. So don't worry, you're not alone. If you want to share how you're feeling, you're welcome to. There's going to be a little less interaction or sort of back and forth today, but that's not to take away from this experience here today. So hopefully you learn a few things. Or take away something. There will be a reflection sheet available on the website a bit later. And just to sort of take away some of the points here today, I'm not using a bunch of slides like I normally do. I'm doing a slightly different approach today. So do bear with me. So burnout is boring. Let's talk thriving instead. I will just mention a few things about burnout, specifically that if you're feeling this way right now, you're not alone. So let's take a look at the stats. There's 9 in 10 of us, at least in the UK, that are reporting burnout symptoms. And HR associations basically say that burnout is the biggest risk in 2026. So that's what they're facing. That's what the crisis calls are like going into HR. It's not anything else. It is burnout. And there's 48% of employees globally report that they're burnt out going into work. So that's almost half the population are experiencing burnout. That's at unprecedented levels. So if this is you right now, you're not alone. And like I said, I've been there not that long ago. I know what it's like. I've worked the hours. I've felt the lack of results around me, and just having this skeptical mind that it's not actually going to change, and I don't know how to get out of it. Yes, there's guidance online, but nothing felt like it was practical that I could implement it. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. And so I'm going to share with you 3 key items today that have really helped me change my life from burnout to thriving, from feeling like I didn't want to get up in the morning, like I couldn't recover, to really being not necessarily jumping out of bed, but close enough, and excited to be here. So what is burnout? Like I said, I'm going to share a bit on burnout, but that's not the purpose of this session right here. It's talking about the recovery. So first off, you need 3 criteria to all exist in order for it to be labeled as burnout. So if you just have 1 or 2, that's not enough for it to be labeled as burnout. So the first of the criteria is exhaustion. So overwhelming physical, mental, and emotional fatigue. You feel completely drained, lack of energy, struggle to recover. The second criteria is negativity. So feelings of negativity, detachment, or cynicism related to your job. So burnout is specific to your job. So if you're feeling any of these things, from personal or life experiences, that does not qualify as the burnout label, but is still really important that these strategies are going to help as well. So please do take them to heart. whether it's like, burnout from a work perspective, or whether or not you're feeling this from sort of just life in general. With regards to negativity, you can isolate yourself from colleagues, or view tasks with resentment. I somewhat did both of these, so I know what it's like. And the last of the criteria is a feeling of being unsuccessful. So a decline in productivity and performance. You feel a lack of accomplishment, doubt your skills, and struggle to achieve desired results. So absolutely, like I said, this was me. With regards to the exhaustion, I was burning the candle at both ends of the stick, at both ends, basically, for a lot of my career, getting minimal hours of sleep, maybe like, a few hours, but really working hard. There's some instances where I was working over like 20-hour days. So it's certainly not recoverable. And then even when I was getting the sleep, I did not feel like I was re-energized, like I had a full tank of energy. And of course, with that comes focus as well. So I didn't necessarily have 100% focus on activities. And I felt that I was like, at one point when I was completely burnt out, even just regular chores felt like effort. So then that led to bad habits. And I didn't necessarily feel like cooking. So I'd eat things on the run. And of course, it would be all the wrong foods that I was eating. And I didn't necessarily have full amount of energy to do my full workout at the gym, things like that. And the most important thing that I found was that when I had low energy, I'd push through those tasks through sheer determination, caffeine or sugar, of course, rather than actually feeling like I had the energy to do that particular task. From a negativity standpoint, I felt skeptical. I was looking at the risks of things, focusing on the risks, focusing on negatives rather than the positives and the benefits. And I've said in previous live streams and socials that events both have positives and negatives to them. So I was very much focused on the negatives, very much skeptical. I had a number of instances that could be viewed from a negative lens. And that then shaped my beliefs and actions and behaviors and thoughts that then compounded how I was showing up into later situations that had no relevance to the previous one. Then, of course, the last criteria, unsuccessful. Well, if I'm not showing up in the right way, if I'm showing up with low energy and that negativity or that skepticism, I'm not necessarily going to achieve the goals I want to achieve. And so it compounded the fact that I felt behind. I'm not achieving my goals. What's the point? Feeling directionless, having doors close on me. And it just sort of felt just unsuccessful. And so from there, it all impacted how I was showing up. So the purpose of this live stream is, what have I done to recover from that state and re-energize with a new perspective and a new joyful life? So you can certainly see the difference, not necessarily have seen me in the past, but you can sort of see how I am right now. Certainly not like lying on my couch scrolling. I'm here with you today, sharing some of the insights that I've learned on my growth and recovery journey. So here are the 3 things that I'm going to talk about today. It is energy management, alignment, and joy and success. So let me dive right into it. First, with energy management. So it's not time management, it's energy management that makes the difference here. It's I heard about time management. I was pretty good with my calendar in terms of going from one thing to another, always being early for my meetings, trying to wrap things up before heading off. But the key is not in time management, it's in energy management. So you'll appreciate during the day, we've got an energy peak times and energy points where we're feeling a bit drained. So for me, I've got energy in the mornings. Sometimes I also have quite a bit of energy in the evenings, but that afternoon, that mid-afternoon was always a dip in my energy. And so understanding what points of the day my energy was going up versus down naturally without other factors in terms of caffeine, sugar, any type of activities. What was my natural tendency and rhythm for the day? And also so the reason why that understanding the energy flow throughout the day is with energy also comes focus. And research has found that we actually only have 5 hours of true focus each day and only 2 hours of optimal true focus, which means deep focus time. And within there is only rolling in 60 to 90-minute intervals. So take that in for a second here. We've got 24 hours in a day and only 5 hours of actual focus time throughout the day. So it's really understanding what time of day those focus times are for you, because it can be different for everyone. We've got those night owls and we've got those morning people, and some people who sort of dip between the two. I've not necessarily known anyone who's had an energy peak in the afternoon, but that's okay. And it's really about, I suppose, layering in those focus times into, I suppose, putting the most important tasks, the ones that are actually going to move the needle, into those focus spots for throughout the day. Because you really want to not necessarily do the quick wins there. You want to do the tasks that are actually going to move the needle. So everyone's heard of the 80-20 rule. 20% of the activities gives us 80% of the value. So think about the activities that are actually going to move the needle in your life and put those 20% in those 2 hours of deep focus or those 5 hours of true focus each day. And with that, so how can we actually go about understanding those times and sort of putting this into place? So it's really about scheduling our diaries for our optimal energy time. And we can do this through energy audits. So an energy audit, do it if you can just do it for a day, if you can do it for more than one day, that helps you give her a better basis as to what's normal for you. But the energy audit looks at the times of the day, like I mentioned. So at what times I do have, if I want to learn something, that's best for me in the morning. But my energy times are in the morning or in the evening, and I have an energy dip in the afternoon. So naturally, I then put my gym time around midday, because then that keeps my energy level high throughout the afternoon. So it's really about managing the energy and when our natural dips are, and putting an energizer before that trainer is important. Similarly, there might be activities that we actually do throughout the day that we can't avoid or get around. And that could be a conversation with a difficult individual, like a toxic individual or someone who is negative. Or it can be, say, doing admin tasks or compliance tasks. That's something that drains my energy. And so for those is framing them with an energizer. So a 5 minute, say coffee break, speaking to someone at the coffee or water cooler, and or going for a 5-minute walk, doing one before and after that meeting with that difficult individual can help keep the energy levels throughout the day. Yes, it might take a dip in that meeting, but you're then going to regain that, and it's not going to count you out for the rest of the day. So really managing energy through those sorts of methods by understanding the times of the day when you naturally peak and when you naturally dip, and then also the nature of the activities that help you increase your energy, and those, most importantly, that decrease your energy. So understanding those, framing those activities with an energizer is important. The other element that is key to keeping that energy up is reducing the number of decisions that you make. So we make over 20,000 decisions each day. Some people, say with all of the unconscious decisions, it could be up to 30,000 decisions. But say the average is about 20,000. So with that in mind, reducing the number of decisions that you're making wherever possible will help sort of reduce that mental load, and that mental load is draining your energy. So with every decision that you can then automate and become a habit or routine, that's important. So what does that look like for me? That means that in the morning, I've now made a routine of what time I'm sort of waking up, generally speaking. It does change a few times depending on what my morning is, what I have scheduled for the morning. But generally speaking, it's the same routine in the morning. So I know, all right, I first do my meditation, gratitude, and then so on. So I've got yoga time, everything like that. And then also in the evening, I've got my routine. So anything that you can sort of routine, standardize, things like bulk buy, things like make all the meals at one point of the week, and then you've got them for the rest of the week. So reducing the number of decisions that you're having to make on a daily basis, the unnecessary decisions, making a routine, automating things as much as possible is important in order to reduce the mental load, which then drains the energy as well. So if you do those two key things, you can really increase your energy, keep the energy levels up throughout the day. And that's been a huge difference maker to me because, like I said, I've been there in terms of on the couch, just having the energy to scroll Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I've been there and now I'm not doing any of that. So as David Allen said, you can do anything, but not everything. It's the other key element that I suppose I learned on this growth journey is that productivity is not doing the most, it's doing the most important. So it's really about focusing on that 20%, putting that 20% in the key focus hours, the key energy hours, in order to actually move your life forward towards your vision. Which then brings me on to the second point, which is alignment. So alignment with your vision and values. The reason why that is important in the everyday and moving from burnout to actually thriving is not just the impact that it has on our energy, because when we're not aligned, there's an emotional and mental toll within that. And that mental and emotional toll then has a further drain on our energy levels, our physical energy. But most importantly, it gives us direction. So that vision gives us direction where we want to be 5-10 years time. So for me personally, I did have that goal. I wanted to become a mining partner in Vancouver. Life took a bit of a turn, so I didn't end up actually achieving that goal. But that's okay, because actually originally gave me direction. So I was living and really thriving in a state when I had that vision possible. When things started to go wrong with regards to that vision, I let it impact me, but I also lost sight of that vision. And I became more narrowed and more short-term thinking. So that was how I ended up, I suppose, not necessarily achieving my goals, but also not necessarily having meaning of it in the everyday, not necessarily having the direction that I wanted. So creating a vision for 5-10 years away, who do you want to be? So it's really taking a look at the 4 pillars. The first being wealth and career. What do you want to be? What does your career want to look like? Then from a relationship standpoint, what relationships do you want there? And what do they look like? How deep are they? And then we've got the next one is I suppose who we are. So the character traits of who we are 5-10 years time. And last but not least, of course, is the health and fitness. So making sure that all 4 pillars are covered. Where do you want to be 5-10 years time? Then with that then creates moving backwards. What's your 1-year goal? What's your 1-month goal? What's your 1-week goal? And intentional actions for each day. So that really creates meaning in the everyday, helps you see the purpose behind the tasks that you're doing, and really defines what that 20% activities are. So it's really, you can boil it down to 3 priority items each day. The second element for alignment is values. So when we're not aligned with our values, it once again creates that tension drains our energy, and we do not feel like we feel something's wrong, and we can't be ourselves because we're not acting in alignment. We're not acting with integrity. And that's certainly one of my key values. It's my top key value at the moment at this point in time, because it builds self-trust, it builds self-confidence, and it builds that inner strength that we need to propel us forward with our dreams, with our vision, and stand up to people when they're going against what we believe in. So having that confidence, having that self-trust is very important. And knowing that that is my top priority is also then going to help me with decisions. So ranking values is important in order to make decisions in the everyday easier. So it takes away some of the mental burden, because I already know that integrity is my top, so I'm going to act in alignment with my values and vision for the most part, for the everyday decisions. Now, with regards to decisions, what else do I consider with regards to the decisions? It's really about heart-based decisions. So what I've noticed is when I make decisions that are for my true potential, that are going to help me actually achieve my vision and make me live a more fulfilled life, is those expansive, uncomfortable decisions that I make and options that I go with. It's the ones that actually stretch me. It's not the ones that help me feel safe, comfortable, constricted. It's the ones that actually feel uncomfortable and help me grow, put me outside my box. And so that is how I know, is this going to help me make a life more rewarding, or is this just going to help me keep safe? Because what I want to, at the end of the day, or not necessarily at the end of the day, but when I'm 100, I want to look back and not have the what ifs. I want to actually go with the options of the what, at the time. So it's I want to sort of say, okay, well, yeah, that decision was a mistake, but I learned something, because often the mistakes aren't as big as we think. And we can actually learn something from those mistakes, as well as grow if we actually get the results. So it's really about going for the expansive decisions, living that fulfilling life, because life's a journey, not an outcome. So it's not about, it's not about when we turn 100, the life that we're living then, because that's the outcome. It's more about the journey, the 100 years that we've got to live on this earth, and making the best and the most out of them. And I can do that through the heart-based decisions, the decisions that align with my values and my vision, because that will bring my true self out, help me grow, expand into the uncomfortable, and help me reach my true potential. So that is absolutely one of the key things for living a thriving life. And so how has that changed me? Of course, I'm making these expensive decisions. Even this live stream is somewhat just sending me into the discomfort. I'm not reading off of a script. I'm actually going ad lib because I'm pushing myself. So hopefully, you're all bearing with me today, but it's helping me grow and be the person that I want to be. So it's really about being, doing, and then getting the results that I want. So I'm going to get better at this by doing it and pushing myself towards these, goals, and being a better speaker on these videos and live streams. So that is what's changed me. When I, was in my burnout phase, I was not necessarily making the most expansive decisions. I was staying comfortable. I was restricting. I was isolating myself to control more, to feel safe, to feel comfortable, because I felt nothing was going right. So I wanted something to go right if I could control it a bit more. But I suppose growth lives in the chaos, and it's really embracing chaos. So as Lewis Carroll, a famous author, once said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So that really goes back to the vision point there. Vision gives us direction. So I don't want a life that, like, is just what it is based on restrictive, comfortable decisions. I want a life that I've pushed myself. I've, done the maximum I could with my 100 years on this earth. And it's really about working towards my true potential. The last point there is joy and success. So what does this mean in the everyday? As a high achiever, I was always in the chase of success, but never actually feeling it. So like I said, I had that goal of making partner, but I was not necessarily feeling success on the way. When I made manager, when I made senior manager, things like that, I was not necessarily feeling successful, not necessarily celebrating each step along the way. And with that, like I said before, it's not about I suppose living to actually celebrate when we're 100. It's actually celebrating along the way, letting us feel the emotions and our accomplishments along the way, and especially about who we're becoming. So are we becoming our true potential, living to the max each day, not necessarily from I suppose being reckless, but rather in terms of pushing ourselves into this discomfort, and truly growing towards our true potential. So what did that mean for me? Because I suppose when I think about success, or used to think about success, it was always about achieving that long-term goal. So success, I had to redefine it. And I used the Cambridge Dictionary, which is accomplish a lot. So when you accomplish a lot, apparently you're successful according to the Cambridge Dictionary. So what that means is when I take a look at my career, I originally thought I didn't have necessarily a successful career because I saw other people getting ahead, and other people achieving the goal that I actually wanted. So it's really more about taking a look. Well, I've actually gone to Mongolia. I set up a project out there. I've gone to London. I've done a lot of experiences. My life is rich of experiences, so I've got that success. From a personal perspective, I've also got friends and family rich with I suppose connections, and having beautiful people in my life. So it's really about redefining what success means, and redefining what joy means as well. So for me, when I take a look at what this means in the everyday, it's those intentional actions that I mentioned before. So that that 20% activities, if I actually achieve it that day, that's a successful day. If I overcome a challenge, that's a successful day. And if I'm acting like my future self, who I want to be in my vision, that is a successful day. It's not necessarily about achieving the end goal, because we don't know how life will present that end goal to us. We don't know how life will present the results to us. So it's really about accepting what life brings us, but also putting success and joy in the everyday. So when I feel successful, I also feel joy. I grew up with a definition of joy that was rare, and perhaps in a moment of laughter. But joy can also be when I achieve a successful, or when I have achieved some success. And when that's important, because we have to be, to do, to get. So we have to be the person we want to be in order to do the activities that we want to do in order to get the results that we want to get. And so having those emotions, that joy, that sense of success, it then propels us, it drives us, gives us the energy to do the tasks that are necessary in order to actually achieve our vision. So that is why it's important to bring it into the everyday, and that's how we can thrive. So it's about the process, not the outcome. Like I said before, it's not about how we feel when we're 100 years old. It's about the process. Life's a journey, and bringing that joy and success along the way in the process of life is really important. And as a high achiever, I had to redefine what joy and success meant in order to bring it into the everyday. I don't know about you, but I certainly had to. So how has that really changed my life? Well, it means that I wake up like, you know, and I suppose at the end of most days, I've got a red and green sheet, and most days I've actually achieved what I wanted to achieve. And so it's been a successful day. And other days I've sort of like experienced an obstacle, but I overcame the obstacle. And so even though I didn't achieve all of my intended actions, the intention was there. And like, you know, I overcame a challenge. So another successful day. So bringing that joy and success into the everyday also brings that energy that's needed towards our vision. So as Sir Edmund Hillary, the mountaineer, once said, it's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. So it's ourselves that can hold us back by making the wrong decisions, by not necessarily having the alignment that we need, waiting for when we're 100 to feel the success and the joy. And so it's ourselves that can hold us back. So it's really about redefining success as to who you become, not what you necessarily achieve. So I did mention in terms of the everyday, the intentional actions that I achieve, that brings me success. But most importantly, it's about showing up as I want to be. So this is my future self with the positive energy. This is who I am. And that is success. Everything else, whether it's like, you know, someone taking credit for my work or material things, they can be taken away from me. But no one can take away who I've become. And that's someone who's had the vast amount of experience, and also who's got the mindset that I can achieve anything that I set out to do. So on that note, it is moving from burnout to thriving regardless of circumstances. So are my circumstances ideal at the moment? Absolutely not, but that's okay. And has that impacted my day to day? No, because I can still wake up appreciating what I have, having joy and success in the everyday, and having the energy to actually achieve what I want to achieve. So en route to my vision, and I hope you will be too, if you're not already. So 3 things that have helped me get on to the route towards my vision and my true potential. First is the energy management to re-energize and get more out of my day. Second is the alignment, driving me forward by aligning my priorities with my vision and values. And the third is redefining success in a way that serves me, recognizing that life is a journey, not an outcome. So enjoy the ride. Life's a journey, like a road trip. So energy management is the fuel in the car. Alignment is knowing the destination and choosing the route. And success is enjoying the drive, not just the arrival. So thank you for joining us here today. Control your destiny, or someone else will. A reflection sheet, as I mentioned, will be available on our website shortly, a bit later today. And in the meantime, sign up for our newsletter to keep up with the latest insights and practical strategies for managing the emotional load. I do wish you a joyful and energized day. It's okay if you're not necessarily feeling it at the moment, but if you put in some of these practical strategies, it will come. It will come. So hope everyone's having a great day, and just think about some of these strategies to help you along the way.